I'm sitting on the deck. Oh, I don't know how to use this. Okay. And I took my husband's work iPad, and there's a bunch of toys because we were just tired and didn't clean them up. There's a shed. Maybe you can hear the pond. There's a little pond out there. But yeah, I'm sitting out here because it's nice. And now my family won't think I'm too crazy. But I'm going to try to do a quick video for you guys. Sorry about all the shaking. I'll figure it out. If you see something scary behind me, I would like to know. So like there are deer, there are rabbits, there's a fox. I don't know, there's like birds and stuff out there, of course. But if you see something else, please let me know, because I would be really nervous. And I would be able to see it, but maybe not. So you gotta tell me. Okay. Alright, it's a minute in, so we better get this video started. Okay, for the different classes, we've got different things to address. So first up, at a minute 45, we're going to talk briefly about Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is a country that you might think, oh, I've heard of it. Is it really that big of a deal? And it kind of is. And it doesn't mean that other countries aren't a big deal. It just means that Saudi Arabia has a very unique, up and down, I'm looking up and down, very unique relationship with the United States and also just in the Muslim world. So I'm going to try to do a quick switch over here really fast. Oh, how am I going to do this? Okay. Oh, I can't do it mid-video. Oh, jeez. All right. Now we're looking at the sky and the trees. We're moving over to some beat-up old furniture and ready. A computer screen. That's probably too hard to see. Oh, sweet. Oh, yeah, you can see that. All right. So here's the deal. And I'm going to show you another map in a second. All right. So the reason why Saudi Arabia is on the list of places to consider is because it is such a powerhouse nation in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia is a nation that really came to be after World War I, and it especially came to be as in, like, you know, the colonial days. We had different families coming together and becoming more influential in that area, especially with the favor of the Europeans. So there's a family called the Al Saud family, and the Al Saud family rules this place. All right, let me see if I can do this at the same time. Ready? Oh, wait. This big nation right here, okay, in the Arabian Peninsula. That's where Mecca is, Medina, the important cities, where the Hajj is made. And so the people that rule this area are going to be very influential. And one thing to consider with the people, or the leadership, and the majority of the people in Saudi Arabia that this map is actually showing you, is that the Saudis are what we call Sunni Muslims. So this is kind of something that people should know already, even from previous classes, but there are two major groups of Muslim followers, or sects, and the largest one, about 85%, is the Sunni population. On this map, it is orange. You can kind of see the key there in the bottom corner. And the other population that's most significant, so we do have a smaller population there in the blue, but really that's kind of regional and not as influential in the world. But the other population would be the Shia, sometimes people say Shiite, but Shia Muslim population. And remember that the difference between the two started way back in the 600s, when it was all about who the followers, who the leaders after the Prophet Muhammad would be. You know, would that be a family member, or would that be someone who was a respected leader who could take over the role in the community? And the difference is that Shias especially went with more of the family line, the bloodline, and then have a lot of respect for certain individuals there, whereas Sunnis say that it could be anyone. And those differences have actually led to fighting over time. They've led to serious issues between different countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran. So you can see Iran is that big red blob in the middle of the map. And it just means that in time, you know, you're going to have sectarian or groups fighting. And that can make peace really difficult in some places, like even Iraq, you know, right now, stemming from the years and years of the Iraqi conflict that we were involved in. So it's really hard to bring stability between some of these groups. Sunnis, some don't even recognize Shias as Muslims, so there's a lot of trouble there. But I guess the one other thing to mention about Saudi Arabia is that they are a really influential group in an organization that has an influence in the world that you might hear about sometime, and it's called OPEC. So OPEC is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. I'm going to say that again. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. And basically, by the 1960s and 70s, these countries that had a lot of oil in the Middle East started to say, hey, we're becoming independent, we want to have control over things, and we want to be in control over production of oil. And we're going to do it as a bloc or a united front. We're not just going to be separate countries. So one of the things that you can see in this chart thing is that some of the nations there have a significant amount of oil. And you're going to hear about some of the other ones in other presentations, maybe Iran or Venezuela, kind of depending on which class we're in here, who's presenting what. But these nations band together to set oil prices, to address, are they going to put more oil barrels into the marketplace? So are they going to increase supply, therefore affecting demand, etc.? And so they can affect prices. In the 1970s, when they held back a bunch of oil, it caused an oil shortage. And, that was a pretty stressful time for a lot of people, especially in the West and in the United States. Now, OPEC's a little less influential because we've started to try to tap into oil reserves in other places, especially here in the U.S., of course, like our own oil. So the other thing with Saudi Arabia, I guess, to consider, and now I'm getting really crazy because I've somehow moved around like the floor of the deck. Oh my gosh, look guys, I'm flipping this thing, it's all weird. But I had these magazines out, and I just want to point out something. One thing to consider is that, in all these different places that we're going to be talking about, this looks so weird. In all these places that we're talking about, the people are just like you and I. Definitely their faith and their governments and the culture of the region, that was weird, culture of the region is going to influence them. But this is actually one of my favorite articles. It's an old one, and it just talks about how, the young people in Saudi Arabia are definitely kind of challenging authority. The Al Saud family does have a pretty conservative grip over the nation, and that's because they really want to kind of keep, this central important place of Saudi Arabia as an important kind of leader in the Muslim world. So, in this place, you are going to have some influences of Sharia law, where Islamic law is going to influence the government. But, we will put you to death if we want to. Women, here's another picture in the article. Ooh, okay. Women, of course, having many more restrictions. There's a big debate. I actually need to check, but women were trying to figure out, or trying to fight to get the right to drive on their own, which is something that we've been doing for a long time. But you can see that also, we've got people who are just living life like we are. Can you see that picture? Just goofing off. There's another magazine here. Whoa! On the deck. You can see all the mess. Okay. Another picture here where we have a female, let's see if we can work this out, who, okay, we're turning this, okay, whatever, who is obviously choosing to keep her face covered, but this isn't happening behind, closed doors and family compounds, or for everybody. For a lot of people, they go to gyms, boutiques, women-only shopping malls, college, wear makeup, all that sort of stuff, but a lot of it is just more private. And, people also get on the internet and have a bunch of fun and all that sort of stuff, but sometimes they just, feel like there are times when they should be more private. Okay, so I'm turning this. Oh, wait, you turn it upside down. Whoa. Oh my gosh, okay. So that was actually really long, but I'm going to just make a few comments here about Syria. Syria is a place that you should be hearing about in the news all the time if you're paying attention to the news. And the deal with Syria, as many of you read with Arab Spring, or articles about the Middle East, is that this sentiment of, or desire for, freedom of expression. And I say that because that term kind of encompasses so many things. It's not just speech, but it's that right to just kind of do what you think is best for you. That freedom of expression a few years ago started to really spread in North Africa and some of the Muslim nations that were pretty tightly held by leaders. Sorry, drippy nose here. And, in some of these places, such as Libya or Tunisia, we ended up having people revolt against the governments, and they pushed for more independence. Now, Libya is a bit of a mess still, but, we see that. It spreads in Egypt. Egypt is trying to figure out, its leadership, but people, had pushed for just more of a voice and a little less corruption. So, this spirit kind of spread to Syria, but the issue more in Syria is that the leader, Bashar al-Assad, is someone who took over basically after his dad died. It's kind of a dynasty with the family, but al-Assad was a little bit more controlling than his father was, and Syria, which was a pretty stable nation, I'm going to show you a map in a second, but I can't mess this up, pretty stable nation, started to really have trouble with some of the different groups breaking away from Assad's smaller Alawite is the term for his people, who kind of ruled the government, but his smaller Shia group that ruled the nation. So, I believe that's right, that they are Shia. Okay. But it's like a whole bunch of these rebel groups that all want different things, but many of them just looking for kind of more freedom, fighting against Assad's government, which is fighting to hold on to the power that they had. They're receiving a little bit more support from Russia, who doesn't want to see the area destabilized and has been trading and working with Syria for a long time. And, then other countries get involved, and now it's becoming just a human rights campaign mess. It's believed that Assad used chemical weapons on some of his people, food crises, and then more than anything, people fleeing because they just don't want to be in this world. And they're also fleeing from ISIS, which we'll address in a second. So they're going to Turkey, which is the northern border, then they're trying to get to Greece, and we've heard a lot in the past few months about, well, especially like year, about the refugees who are looking for places in Europe to just welcome them so that they can have a better life, even temporarily, even, hoping that they can someday go back to Syria. There's a concern that bad guys are with the refugees, but that doesn't, that happens, but it's not usually the case in a great number. So I'm going to show you, let's see, Syria really fast. Now, another problem in Syria is that we have ISIS. So I think I put that on your paper where it's Islamic State of Syria and Iraq. And you'll hear different names for them, of course, different references. But I'm going to hold this up. Alright, that looks a little bit goofy, but you can see the different countries. There's Syria. Obviously sharing a little bit of a border with Israel, so being a whole part of that kind of Arab League, that Arab population that had fought against Israel in time. This is an ancient world, Aleppo, Damascus, all being, just beautiful cities that are really, in many cases, being destroyed. But what's happening then is that where that, I don't know what that brown blob is the land that ISIS is, kind of taking control over, and they're taking control, especially in the northern part of Iraq, kind of parts of Kurdistan, remember those Kurds, but in that area they're taking over a lot of the oil fields, although we've been pushing back and kind of getting them out of there. But ISIS has been in control of that area. They're extremely brutal. They're an extremely conservative Muslim group that just wants no Western influence right now, and the destabilization because of civil wars allows these groups to take over local populations. So it's a bit of a mess, and we have to see what the future holds. But I encourage you to pay attention, because these areas really do affect our lives as well. And even if you don't think that they do, maybe you can just consider that there are young people living there just like you, who are hoping for peace and potentially freedom, in their futures. All right, this has been really long, but hopefully that helped. There's 2 countries, and if you have more questions, you can ask me about them later. All right, bye. bad guys or gals or people. None right now. Okay.